2 dollars, $3, they're gonna have to take it out of his mouth. Now, this is her little sister, she's got a little bone, her bone is the same bed. When you see her here. Oh, no, this one. This one's mine.
So when they come to do it,
And she gets on top of her
Yeah, I wouldn't wear that. I would wear your diamond here. You could.
I'll sit here.
No, it isn't. It is, but it's good.
Yeah, it is good to have
Throw
Thank you. Did you get back on the trip? Oh, it felt like the whole family. Oh, I thought they said that was about a month ago. Yeah, we did.
Got back okay, but then again, I just went around, my grandson.
Dorothy's carriage. We thought it was.
We all like to, like, how are you? I'm doing okay. Oh,
very well. So he did a good job. I did something well with that as well. And the nice thing about
Hockey. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Warner.
How's everyone doing? Did everyone get settled in? Good morning, Kate. All right. Beautiful January day, beautiful view of the mountain. Yeah, not everybody gets that view. We get to see America's mountain when we drive in. All right, so we are continuing this quarter on enduring beliefs of the church. Prayer and humility. We're going to be a familiar story in, well, I guess all of these, especially Luke and Genesis, about Abraham today and his intercession for the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And then we'll be looking at a parable, the prayer of the tax collector and the Pharisee. And then 1 John 5, 14 and 15, just a couple of verses there. All right, so into the lesson. Boldness and humility. Can you have both of them?
Why? We sure can.
We can. We can have humility and be bold. Does anybody come in mind when you think of a humble person in the Bible?
Well, Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And he was bold too.
Bold, and he? Okay, Gordon, you want to read this one?
Yes. This is Numbers 12, 1-3 in the NIV. Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? They asked. Hasn't he also spoken through us? And the Lord heard this. Now Moses was a very humble man, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth.
Yeah. Now, did Moses write that? Yeah. Probably somebody else put that in there because the end of Deuteronomy, he writes about his death and his burial there. So he probably didn't write that. But Moses was a very humble man, more humble. So Miriam and Aaron were perhaps a little jealous of their younger brother here. He was getting all the fame here. So when they said this, the Lord said, "Come on over here." And he came down in a cloud and he says, you need to listen to him because I speak to him and he speaks what I say. The cloud removes, and poor Miriam had leprosy. And Moses prayed for her, and he says, well, okay, but she has to stay outside the camp for 7 days, and then she can come back in. She'll be cured of her leprosy. Okay, humility, there's a reward. The reward for humility and the fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. Does that mean if you don't have riches, you're not humble? Can you take this back? Or maybe it's spiritual riches, that type of thing. But to do good is to fear the Lord and keep his commandments. Okay, lesson context. The word prayer and its forms, or its, praying, prayed, its synonyms. It's found in 229 verses in the Bible, at least in the NIV. Could somebody get Jeremiah 7:16? All right, Kate. And then somebody get 2 Corinthians 12:8 and 9. Okay, Donna. And then someone 1 John 5:16. Okay. And then Exodus 14:15 and 16. Okay. So while there are times when prayer is at best a waste of time, well, that's hard to think prayer is a waste of time, but sometimes, and at worst, an improper substitute for action that God is expecting us to take. That's in Exodus. In the many circumstances where prayer is an appropriate action, there are various postures we might take, various forms we might take, and then we'll be looking at those three during this lesson. So who's got Jeremiah 7:16? Okay, Kate.
So do not pray for this people, nor offer any plea or petition for them. Do not plead with me, for I will not listen to you.
Okay, this is the Lord speaking to Jeremiah. They've already started the exile into Babylon, and the Lord is telling Jeremiah, he's back in Jerusalem. He didn't get in exile. But he said, don't pray for Jerusalem. Don't pray for the temple. I've already made up my mind. I'm going to do to Shiloh. I'm going to do to Jerusalem what I did to Shiloh. Remember, Shiloh was where the tabernacle was during the time of the judges. So he says, don't pray for them. The other two verses, 11:14 and 14:11, essentially repeats the same thing. So he's telling Jeremiah 3 times, chapter 7, 11, and 14. Jeremiah, don't petition for Jerusalem. So who has 2 Corinthians 12:8 and 18? Donna.
3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Okay. So this is Paul. He had that thorn in the flesh, a messenger from Satan, and he asked the Lord to remove it 3 times, and the Lord said, enough. So I don't think he asked the 4th time. And then 1 John 5:16.
If you see a fellow believer sinning in a way that does not lead to death, you should pray, and God will give that person life. But there is a sin that leads to death, and I am not saying you should pray for those who commit it. Okay, so there's the Lord, or Jesus, John is saying there in his letter, so there's a sin that leads to death, maybe that unforgivable sin, so don't pray for that. Exodus 14:15 and 16. The Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, that the people of Israel may go through the sea on dry ground. Okay, so he's telling Moses they're up against the sea. Now they're crying out to the Lord. The Lord's telling Moses, don't cry out, stretch out your staff here and then go across. And there's also the passage in James, talks about faith and works. He says, if you see someone poorly clothed, hungry, that sort of thing, don't say go in peace, do this, do that. He said, do something for them, give them clothes. Don't just pray about them, but if you can do something, do it. Be the Lord's manner to help them. Okay, so we're talking about bold prayer. That's in our Genesis passage. Humble prayer. That's in Luke.
And then confident prayer, that's in 1 John, that one is. Okay, so bold prayer. And I got prayer in italics there. Is it a prayer? Is it a petition? We'll look. Is this a prayer? Okay, background. In the lesson, it only had like a couple of verses, but you're getting right into the middle of it, and I want to start, you know. I assume most of you did not read Genesis 18 this morning, and you're totally familiar. You don't get homework, you know, so we'll do this here. But here's sort of a layout of the life of Abraham here. We can see he had about 100 years or so in his life. This is our lesson here today. We will be doing when the Lord appears to Abraham on the plains of Mamre. He's telling him, he and two others are telling Abraham, you know, what he intends to do with this wicked city. Okay. Now, the reason Abraham is involved in it is because of his nephew lives there. When they came out of Egypt, Lot was with Abraham in Egypt, and he had all these flocks, all these herds. They were just getting each other's way, so they decide to separate. And so Lot goes down to Sodom because the place was richly watered at that time, so he picks that. And then Sodom gets attacked by these coalition of 5 kings, and they take Lot and some others captive. So Abraham goes and rescues them, brings them back, makes an offering to Melchizedek when he comes back. So he has relatives there in Sodom. So that's how he is connected with that city, even though he doesn't live there. But we see a lot of covenants here with regard to Abraham. The covenant when God calls him says, I'm going to make you into a great nation. Those whom you bless will be blessed. Those who curse you will be cursed. And then the covenant is confirmed with the sacrifice. Sign of the covenant would be circumcision. This is before Isaac is born, but it's with Abraham, his servants, and Ishmael. And then there's another covenant that Abraham makes with Abimelech, who was a Philistine. They were also clashing with each other, especially over water rights, so they make a covenant. But could that be considered a covenant also? It's agreement that Abram would go one way, and then Lot would go another way. So Abraham settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. So you wonder, you know, Lot picked a good land, but he didn't pick good neighbors here. So God appears to Abraham at Mamre, Genesis 18:1 through 33. Okay, so we'll just read this quickly before we get into our actual lesson. This is more the background here. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees, they're called terebinths or oaks, of Mamre, while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. So the Lord appeared in the heat of the day. When did he appear to Adam and Eve?
Cool of the evening.
Cool of the evening. So the Lord can come out during the heat of the day. So Abram looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. Is that anything unusual? But he thinks they're unusual with the treatment. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent, meet them, and bowed low to the ground. So there must have been something special about these 3 men that made Abram do this, bow down to them. So that's where Mamre is right there. See if this works. Yeah, right there. And then here it is in relation. Here's Jerusalem. Here's Bethlehem. So it's up here. It's up here on some high ground. And Abraham goes for a walk with them. And they go over here and they can see down here towards Sodom. And this is believed to be where Sodom was at that time, or where it was. It's not there anymore. So there's the big tree. He said, Abraham says to these three men, if I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord. There we have Lord, Adonai. He's calling them Adonai, not Yahweh. Do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under your tree. So hospitality here. Let me get you something to eat so you may be refreshed, and then you may go on your way. Now that you have come to your servant, very well, they say, do what you say. So Abraham is offering hospitality, washing feet, giving them something to eat, and they say, fine, do as you say. So Abraham hurried into the tent. He gets Sarah. He says, quick, get 3 seahs of the finest flour and knead it and bake some bread. How much is that? 36 pounds. Is that enough bread for 3 people? Then he ran to the herd, selected a choice tender calf, and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. Remember the prodigal son that got the calf? 36 pounds of flour, a calf. Abraham is preparing a banquet for these 3. Who hurried to prepare it. He then brought some curds and milk, the calf that he had prepared, and set these before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. So he's not even eaten with them. So this is interesting. We got angels eating. I think this is the only place where angels eat. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. But I think Abraham actually knew that these people were special. So one of them asked, where's your wife, Sarah? They asked him. He says, there in the tent. Then one of them said, I will surely. Then one of them, we don't know, is this the Lord or one of the other 2? Then one of them said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son.
It made me think Gabriel was used to announce birth.
Yeah.
John, Jesus. Why not to Sarah?
Yeah. Now, Sarah was listening at the entrance to this tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Abraham was around 99 or something, 100, and Sarah was about 90 or so. So they were past the age of childbearing. But after Sarah dies, Abraham marries again and has 6 more children. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I'm worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure of having a child? Then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I am old? So this is Yahweh speaking to Abraham and wondering, why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at this point in time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah was afraid, so she lied. She said, I didn't laugh. But Abraham says, yeah, you laughed. You laughed. We heard you. Now, earlier, can we really put all the blame on Sarah? This is a chapter earlier, chapter 17. God also said to Abraham, as for Sarah, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. I will bless her, and I will surely give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. Abraham fell face down. He laughed and said to himself, will a son be born to a man 100 years old? So he's fell down and he's laughing. That reminds you that abbreviation ROTL that you do in text messages, rolling on the floor laughing. So that's what Abraham's doing. Well, Sarah bare a child at the age of 90. So there we get the age. She's 90, he's 100. And Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael might live under your blessing. So that's the son he has with Hagar. When the men got up to leave, they looked down toward Sodom. Remember where Mamre was up there on the ridge, up high, and then you go down, look down to Sodom. Sodom's actually below sea level. And Abraham walked along with them to see them on the way. Then the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do?" So the Lord has something in mind, but he's coming down and actually assessing the situation. Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. So that goes along with that covenant, which is in Genesis 12, 1 through 3. Now, this verse puzzled me a little as far as grammar goes. Tell me if it puzzles you. For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised them.
Him.
Yeah.
He, him.
He switches from first person. Lord switches from talking about himself in the first person to the third person. I have chosen him, and he will do what he has promised him. But most of them, the NLT takes a little liberty and cleans it up. I think, I have singled him out so that he will direct his sons and their families to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. Then I will do for Abraham what I have promised.
That sounds better.
Rather than, you turn that into your English teacher and you're going to have some red marks on it. In fact, I've copied verses from the Bible directly into PowerPoint, and it wants to correct the grammar. Then the Lord said, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sin so grievous that I will go down and see if they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know." So the Lord is saying, if he's omnipresent and he's all knowledge, why does he have to come down and check things out? There was one other time when he came down and checked things out, wasn't there? Tower of Babel. Lord comes down and checks things out there, what they're doing. So, we have the outcry. Sin grievous in the outcry. So who's doing the outcry, and what is their grievous sin? Well, we find out in Ezekiel. You got to wait till Ezekiel to find out what their grievous sin was. Now, this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and the needy. They were haughty, and they did detestable things before me. Therefore, I did away with them, as you have seen. So what was their sin? They didn't help the poor, did they? They were haughty. So maybe the poor and the needy cried out to the Lord. And we'll get one more possibility of who cried to the Lord with regard to the state in Sodom. The men turned away and went towards Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord. So the two men leave, they go down towards Sodom, and then they meet Lot at the gate, and then he offers them hospitality, just as Abraham did when they came to his tent. So the petition. So this is where our lesson actually begins. That was background. So is Abraham's petition to the Lord prayer? So what is prayer? Here's one gift: offering up of our desires unto God for things agreeable to his will. His petition is, Lord, can you spare them if there's some righteous there, in the name or through the mediation of Jesus Christ? Well, Abraham doesn't ask in the name of Jesus Christ, does he? By the help of the Holy Spirit, with a confession of our sins and thankful acknowledgement of his mercies. So I was looking through the Bible, different versions. Look at the paragraph headings, the pericope heading. Did any of them have prayer? Most have pleads NIV, Abraham pleads for Sodom. ESV, intercedes. I did find one and only one that has prayer. It's the contemporary English version. Abraham prays for Sodom. So you could say, what do we do when we pray? We speak to the Lord, right? Who was Abraham speaking to? You got him right there.
We sometimes talk about prayer in different ways, like an intercessionary prayer, a mediatory prayer.
Well, he is definitely interceding. We actually haven't gotten it. Okay, I see Alex is still here. He said if the lesson wasn't any good, he's going to be leaving. Is it? You give me a thumbs up? Okay, good. So the first recorded prayer in the Bible. Who does the first prayer in the Bible? Abraham. This is Abraham and Abimelech. When they went to Egypt, remember, Sarah was beautiful. Abraham was afraid, so he said, oh, she's my sister. So Pharaoh sees her, and then he takes her into his harem. And then, bad things happen to Pharaoh's household, and then he releases Sarah. And then when he gets out of Egypt, he does the same thing with Abimelech, so they take him into his house, into the house there. Now this is God speaking to Abimelech. He says, now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet. Abraham is a prophet. We don't think of him as being a prophet. And he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, you may be sure that all you who belong to you will die. So I guess he better return, right? Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female slaves so they could have children again. For the Lord had kept all the women in Abimelech's household from conceiving because of Abraham's wife, Sarah. Now, an interesting thing about what Abraham did, he did it twice, passing his wife off as his sister. You would have think God would have scolded Abraham, but he doesn't. In either case, he scolds Pharaoh, he scolds Abimelech, and in both cases, Abraham gets wealthy. They make retribution to Abraham. Now, Abraham refused to take anything from the king of Sodom when he returned all the captives, because I don't want you to say I got wealthy because of you. But he does take stuff from Pharaoh and Abimelech. Abimelech was a Philistine.
Warner, I was looking at Genesis 4. To Seth, this is verse 26, a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. And at that time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. Is calling.
Yeah, that could be. Calling can be praying. That could be one of those sin, but that's the first time. The one I mentioned was the first time. If you do a search on pray, that's the first time you did. But calling on the name of the Lord. So that's with Enoch?
Yes.
Okay. Enoch, who was the, great-grandfather of Noah? Somewhere in there. Okay. Then Abraham approached him, the Lord, the creator of everything. He approached him, and he said, will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous people? So he's negotiating here. 50. Doesn't know that, hey, there's not that many. Far be it from you, Lord, to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you, Lord, will not the judge of all the earth do right? So he's questioning the Lord's justice, isn't he? Will you not do right? You know, you're going to wipe out the good with the wicked. I remember watching a movie called The Patriot. I don't know if you've ever seen it. The Patriot, but all these people were gathered locked in a church building, and the commander gives order, says, burn it down. But he said, but sir, there's some of our people in there. Well, you can't do it. He says, burn it down. God will separate the good from the bad when they get. So I thought that reminded me of this. So far be it from you. So he's actually questioning the Lord's motive. Will you not do right? So, is that justice? Destroying the good with the wicked? Sometimes the good get hurt. Sometimes the innocent get hurt because of what the wicked do, don't they?
Is that what we call collateral?
Collateral damage, yeah. You think he was bold?
Yes.
Bold. You know, Moses will do stuff like that, and the Lord will put him in his place. But he seems to be giving Abraham a long leash here and not going after him. The Lord said, yes, okay, agree. If I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I'm going down there, sending 2 angels down there. I will spare the whole place. Everyone will be spared because of the 50. Then Abraham spoke again. Now that I have been so bold, he's admitting it, isn't he? He's admitting he was bold as to speak to Adonai, though I am nothing but dust and ashes. So there's humility. You know, who am I to be speaking to you? I'm dust and ashes. What if the number of the righteous is 5 less than 50? So now he's going to 45. Will you destroy the whole city for lack of the 5? If I find 45, I will not destroy it. So, okay, it's a little more breathing room. 45. So let's go down another 5, okay? Once again, he spoke to him. What if only 40 are found there? He said, okay, for the sake of 40, I will not do it. Then he said, may the Lord not be angry. Oh, he's really testing the patience of the Lord, isn't he? What if only 30 can be found? He answered, I will not do it for 30. So how many did he come down this time? 10. He brought it down 5. Now he's going down 10. 30. I won't do it if there's 30. Abraham said, now that I've been so bold, oh, can you imagine God? Oh, no. As to speak to the Adonai, what if only 20 can be found? He said, for the sake of 20, I'll not do it. But he said, may the Lord not be angry. Oh, here he goes again. But let me speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found? And he said, for the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. So now all there has to be there is 10 righteous people.
It's quite different when the Apostle Paul was worried about the kickback, the aggression against the church, and then God says, "Don't be afraid, because I have yet many people in this city."
Yeah. Said the same thing about Elijah when he thought he was the only prophet. Would you have been as bold as Abraham in this situation?
He was bold as brass.
Yeah. What caused Abraham to have such faith? What did God promise Abraham back in Genesis 12? Yeah. Maybe he counted on God keeping his promise. You know, if you turn me to dust and ashes right now, how are you going to keep that promise? How many righteous people were found? Let's go to 2 Peter. If he, that is the Lord, condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah by burning them to ashes and made them an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly, if he rescued Lot, what kind of man?
Righteous.
He did find a righteous man who was distressed by the depraved conduct of the lawless. For that righteous man, living among them day by day, was tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds he saw and heard. You think he might have cried out to the Lord? He might have been one of the ones doing the outcry. If this is so, then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials and to hold the unrighteous for punishment on the day of judgment. Peter is writing in this letter to Christians who were undergoing trials. You know, he's saying the Lord can rescue people from trials. Now, humble prayer, Jesus' parable, the Pharisee and the tax collector. I remember this story and, it's a parable. Okay, it didn't really happen. Now, the widow's 2 mites, that actually happened. That's not a parable. Jesus' parable. The parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. Now, who would that have been? The Pharisees. What did Jesus? There is none righteous, no, not one. So they were confident of their own righteousness. They didn't have to worry about things. You know, they don't have to ask for forgiveness of sins or anything. So Jesus told this parable. Now, is he speaking to them or speaking to a crowd in general? So he's actually calling out a Pharisee here. He didn't call him out in the parable of the prodigal son, but he's actually calling out a Pharisee, give them an example of how not to pray. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. So they're going into the temple, let's see, to pray. There's a section there, the court of the women. That's where you could give your offerings, and that's where the women were allowed to go that far, and they couldn't go into the court of Israel, and only the men could go there. But that's where they are, so they're going there to pray. Now the Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and I give 1/10 of all I get. Is there anything wrong with being thankful that you don't have to be a robber? That you don't have to be? Anything wrong with being good?
He said it with
Condescension toward the other one, comparing himself to the other person, yet both of them, compared to God's standard, be holy, both of them, are way down there. So he fasts twice a week and give 1/10 of all I get. Now, fasting twice a week, that's tradition. Give 1/10 of all I get. They were tithing. There was the first tithe, and then there was the second tithe. So that's good, tithing. That goes to the Levites. That goes to the care of the temple. There's also a temple tax. So he's telling all, I'm not like this. I'm not bad, and I'm good because I fast twice a week, and I give 1/10 of all I get. So, but the tax collector stood at a distance, would not even look up to heaven. So is that the standard? Do you look up to heaven when you pray? But he beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. So I think in Hebrew it's like 6 words. So who gives the longest prayer? The Pharisee, right? But he's praising himself. Jesus says, some people think that they're big, they're something because they have many words, they speak with many words. But he just gave a simple prayer, just asking God for mercy.
reminds me of Malachi 2:17. You're wearing me out with your many words.
Yeah. So, keep it simple, keep it humble, keep it just pray from the heart. I tell you, the crowd here, that this man, rather than the other one, went home justified before God. He was in the right place before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. That reminds you of another parable? Now, he told a parable to those who were invited to a banquet when he noticed how they chose the places of honor. Where do you sit when you come in? Say all the seats are available. Where do you sit? Saying to them, when you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in a place of honor, lest someone more distinguished than you be invited by him. So don't take that best place. Where did the Pharisees and scribes like to sit in the synagogue?
Chief seats.
Yeah. The best seats, they like to sit in the seat of Moses. You sat up front and you could see all the people and they could see you up there. Wow, look at that person up there in their fine gown with their tassels and everything. And he who invited you both will come and say to you, give your place to this person, and then you will begin with shame to take the lowest place. The walk of shame, right?
They love the chief seats.
Yes.
Rather than the cheap seats.
Yeah, the chief seats. So you're there, you're sitting there, everyone pretty much is there, and then this other person comes in, and in front of all these people, you have to take a lower place, maybe even lower than you would because the other places are taken. But when you're invited, go and sit in the lowest place so that when your host comes and he says to you, friend, move up higher, then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at table with you. So last week we mentioned Sirach, and he talked about, inheritance. Says don't give your inheritance away soon. He also has a session on etiquette at a banquet, how to behave. Big thing is don't get drunk. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. So the same type of message with this parable as we get from the other parable of the prayer. And let's get it back on. Okay. How will you pray with humility and confidence? Keeping them both in there. Confidence that your prayer will be heard. What do you think? How can we avoid bragging in our prayers like the Pharisee? I can't imagine doing that, much less how to avoid it. I think that's an easy one. Yes.
Well, it seems to me that praise is part of prayer. And if we start by praising God, that immediately sets us in a secondary position.
Yes.
And that's one way of avoiding bragging.
Yeah, good point. How does the model prayer begin? Or, hallowed be your name. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. What misaligned speech habits can you identify in your own prayers? I think this is the one for self-thought, self-reflection.
Sometimes our prayers try to tell God what to do.
Mm-hmm. What was Abraham doing that?
In a way, yes.
Yeah. Will you not do justice? So what was the most important part of the tax collector's prayer? Asking for mercy? He didn't exalt himself. He humbled himself, would not even said, look up. I don't know if that was a common posture during the prayer, but he would not look up and realized, have mercy on me. How might you incorporate such aspects of humility into your prayers? Again, for private contemplation there. Confident prayer. 1 John 5:14-15. This is the confidence we have when we approach God, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. Doesn't that mean we have to know what his will is? It's predicated upon knowing his will, and we know his will through reading the word. So if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. But hearing us doesn't mean he's necessarily going to answer yes, does he? He heard Paul, heard him 3 times. He said, my grace is sufficient for you. And if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we asked of him. So maybe he's answering no, and maybe that's what we need at that time, or maybe wait. So the bell is coming. What's the difference between appropriate and inappropriate confidence in prayer? Just do it according to his will. How does 1 John, the passage we read, describe appropriate confidence if we do it according to his will? So Christians can pray confidently because God delights in our prayers and wants to grant our requests. Christians can pray boldly by aligning their requests with what God has revealed about his desires. Christians are also to pray humbly because we know that God is God and we are not. More important than physical posture, looking up, one assumes in prayer, is the position of the heart. Posture of the heart. Additionally, prayer is an important means by which the human will is conformed to the divine will. The better we know God, the more we seek God, the more our prayers will be answered because they will align with who God is and what God wants to do in the world. So, thought to remember, pray humbly and boldly with confidence. Next week is Call and Growth. I'll be on Simon Peter. So, that's it. Thanks for your comments.
We have a lot of humble people here. Order.
What's that?